has a lot of layers to it. So it's really, really challenging for me. So every day I try to understand what are the things that I can improve. And the funny fact is, when I started being a manager, without knowing much what I was doing, I did a really bad job. Like my first period as a manager, probably because I was trying to figure out how to do it. I was really bad at it, and luckily I was in an organization that would care about career development and whatnot, and they helped me figure that out. And I became better with practice and a lot of failures under the bridge that I used to learn how to do better. Right now, I can tell you that my management, that I can choose what is my style. It has been changing over time, and it depends on the context where I'm working at, right? For example, in Alibaba, my style was slightly different than AirAsia. So if we want to be current in AirAsia, my leadership style is kind of a little bit of a servant leader, right? I see myself as serving my team in order to achieve their goals. And I see that my goals cascade down into my team. And my objective every day is to try to unblock my team in order to achieve those goals, because I cannot do it by myself. That's something I learned long time ago. Like when I recently started being a manager, I wanted to do everything because I thought I knew how to do it better. And that was a mistake, because then you get burned out really quick, because you want to do things in a certain way with a certain quality because you know how to do it. So then you try to push everyone and show them how to do it, and sometimes you end up being a little bit arrogant. And I'm Argentinian, plus being that's arrogance, by default. Plus, learning how to be a manager, it was arrogance plus arrogance. People didn't like it much, so
I didn't know that was an Argentinian thing.
Oh yeah, it's a cultural, among South Americans, we know. I'll tell you a few jokes about it later. You're gonna laugh. This is really fun. Anyway, so slowly over my career as a manager, I realized that if I can serve my team better and I can provide them the right frameworks, the right tools, and the right resources, they can achieve their goals, then I can achieve my goals. And this is how I started looking at it. And I try to behave the same, not just my direct reports and their direct reports, but also the people who I'm interacting with, are my peers at my peers level, and also to my own manager. I try to sort of serve him in a way to influence through influencing them through service, basically, right? So I try to serve their objectives, and I try to communicate from that point of view, right? That later, if anyone is interested, we can talk about how strategies on how to influence organizations. You need to realize that sometimes you want to do things that they're not directly aligned with what your peers or your managers or other teams want to do. So you need to find out how you can contribute to their goals, and how you can influence them using that perspective, their own perspective, right? So I spend most of my day,
That sounds a lot like your main job is to help the team be more successful. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I see it that way. I try to do it that way, and I struggle, and it's difficult for me because sometimes I need to I need to become I need to lay back a bit. I need to let them make mistake, and I need to let them define their own criteria of quality that are not my own, right? And I need to help them see my vision through everyday work. I cannot get angry if they don't understand what I'm saying, because maybe I'm not communicating correctly. So I try to do it with many techniques and many different ways. And we can talk about that if we want. How do I do it?
Yeah, that sounds good. So you mentioned this is your general leadership style in AirAsia.com right now. May I know in your design team, like how big is your design team, just for
I think we're
context?
stepping around 20, less than 20 people.
Okay, less than 20 people. And I understand
Yeah.
you work remotely with your team right now. There are some people who are based in Malaysia, some are in Singapore.
So
Can I?
it's 100% remote team. There's some people who goes to the office in Malaysia every now and then. In Singapore, in China, in Thailand, in Bangalore, we don't go. We stay at home.
Nice. And just to understand a little bit more, how has your leadership style changed because of COVID, right? Or the way you manage?
Yeah. So now I think the main difference is I rely on being more strategic, right? I rely to be more strategic and delegate more than before. I realize that being remote, there's a certain trust that I need to. I learned that trust is something that I need to invest in, right? And then another thing that I'm doing is, or I'm trying to do, is be more connected, even though I try to give room to my team to figure it out and make mistakes and make their own decisions, even though I don't always agree. I try to be one. I try to behave like a team member more than a decision maker, right? When I see that it's necessary, I have these. Sometimes I see the trade-off on saying, no, guys, let's do it this way and stop the discussion. But most of the time, I try for them to have the arguments and have the discussion and try to understand why are we making these decisions. If somebody propose something, understand why are we proposing this? What are the criteria that we're using? Because I think the main change that I had since pre-COVID to now is I want the team to learn to be more self-sufficient, right? Before, it was okay if they needed my help and I could just, be there with them and travel and, work on a project for a week and then move on, right? Now, I think the circumstances give me the indication that I need to allow them to take the lead and allow them to make more mistakes. I'm not happy when they make mistakes. Let me put this clear. I'm not expecting them to make mistakes, but I think it's part of the learning process, right? If they don't make any mistakes or if they don't have any doubts, but if they don't risk any decisions, there's also no learning. So I try to sit down and be a guiding hand every time they need me. And these last few months, I've been trying to lay more on the sidelines and try to be more an individual contributor, right? Oh, we need to resolve these things. Okay, let me take care of this little scope for you. I'm trying to contribute as a colleague more than just a manager. So I give them space for them to be more self-sufficient, more autonomous, right, in the things that they need to resolve.
Yeah, that sounds great. And could I ask, in terms of helping your team be more independent, what has worked for you? I'm sure you've tried different things as a leader and as a manager. Like what has worked well for your team?
One thing that works really well if you want somebody to take on a project on its own is be really, really, really clear on what are my expectations, like super clear. And there's something really interesting about people who you work with. They start understanding your criteria over time, and they start understanding how you like certain things and certain levels of quality and things that you're willing to negotiate, right? So I guess over time the team start understanding these things and become part of our own little culture. So every time we have conversations, they will know what kind of questions to ask me, and they will know what kind of things they need to resolve by themselves, and they will tell me, let me figure it out, I'll get back to you. I think I went on a tangent, but yeah.
Yeah, so it almost sounds like you empower them in some way and you give them that autonomy to just run with it. And you don't give them the answers. They come to you with the answers, and then you advise them and guide them after that.
Yeah, they are. I think some of the most senior people in my team already understood that when they reach a point where they need, to talk about something strategic, they can come to me and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm struggling with this," and then we can sit down and use different decision-making techniques like pros and cons and lists and diagrams and whatever, and break down the problem until it's easy to resolve. But we do it together instead of me just giving them a solution. And this is what I'm trying to do more often, right? And other times I see things that might not be aligned with what I'm looking for, and I point it out. But I don't stop them because I want them to go through it, and they might teach me something that I didn't know about. I'm open to that as well nowadays. Then before, this is another difference. Thank you for helping me doing this reflection. This is another difference on my style that I changed over the years, right? A few years back, I will say, no, do it this way. This is the way you should do it, right? And now I'm more open to understand a little bit more of, okay, how do you think? I feel we could do it this way, but what do you want to try? What are you thinking? Tell me more, right? What is the, do you think you can get other type of data? We can do other type of research. We can try other type of flows. Let's do it. Show me, right?
So
So I'm trying to create that space for them as well.
yeah, it almost sounds like when you're doing this style of leadership, it almost sounds like you're a coach, right? You're really asking questions and you're getting them to think through that process, and you're asking them even some of the harder questions that maybe they haven't even asked themselves. Would that
Yeah.
would that sound accurate?
Yeah, and yeah, you make it sound like it's amazing. I'm an amazing coach. That is not always true, right? Sometimes I get frustrated and just shout and I get angry. But yeah, this is what I try to do. This is where my heart is. That most of the time I'm aware and I try to do it, and some other times, I didn't have my morning coffee and I get a little upset, and maybe I don't react that way. I react in a different way, basically.
Yeah, I think I've seen some of those moments because we work together on with our student projects as well. So, yeah, I wanted to find out as well, like, when you're trying to build your team and you're trying to make them collaborative as well, because it certainly sounds like it's not just the relationship between you and your team members. How do you help facilitate that interaction between other team members, especially during COVID? It's quite challenging, right? How do you build a culture?
Well, that's we need to unpack a couple of things there, right? I
Sure.
don't think it's as easy as I decide to have a culture and then suddenly happens, right? I don't think it's. I wish there were a Photoshop culture thing software, or you can just design your own culture and then render. That would be amazing. No, the way I found that it works really well is, culture is not one way. Culture is the contribution of every individual in the organization, right? There's a lot of things that come top down, but there's also a lot of things that come bottom up, right? Like this, that's the reality of culture. And when people is not happy about it, they leave, they move, they go, they change teams or they react. And every reaction, every micro interaction and micro contribution is a micro contribution to culture, right? If I stop saying things that I'm disagreeing with, I'm contributing to culture. If I'm challenging all the time, I'm contributing to culture, and so on, right? Like, that's the way it works. And it took me a long time to understand this. Years back, I thought, damn it, senior management, are fucked up or whatever, because this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong. But the truth is, every single person in the company contributes to culture. And I don't want to say it bluntly, but there's certain power that comes with talking about these things and be aware on how you react to these things. So when I became aware of all these mechanisms, I basically I did something that I thought it was natural for me, and I started implementing the human-centered design process within understanding the culture in my team and my organization, right? So the first thing I tried to do is, of course, understand what were the problems that we had, what were the blockers and the big things. So this is something I started doing the first year I started working in AirAsia, and then I did it again the second year, and I started adding more elements to it. The first element I added was a simple strategy, a long-term strategy that I came up with, looking at the current situation in my team and expressing what was my desire of the future of the team and all the steps that we needed to go through. And then I asked the team, in one of these events, I asked the team, okay, guys, I asked Sherman, one of our researchers, you're gonna do this workshop for the team. That is the culture canvas. You're gonna fill in this canvas. So we took a day, we went into a room, I left the room, I gave an introduction, we bought breakfast and we had a conversation. And then I left the room and Sherman started doing the cultural canvas workshop. That is a simple canvas that you can Google, guys. Google has everything. So you can Google cultural canvas and there's plenty of different versions of it. And it's an exercise that helps you understand, common problematics. How do you want to communicate? How do you feel? What is your purpose? It goes from deep to shallow things, and it allows the team to express what kind of culture they want to cultivate. So we did that once, and then based on those inputs from the team and based on my observations from the strategy that I set for a longer term plan, we created an action plan that were combined with immediate things that we can do and then longer term that they had to do with how we collaborate, how we communicate, how we talk to each other, what are the gaps in skill, what are the gaps in soft and hard skills, what are the problems that we have interacting with other teams, right? And all the surrounding day-to-day operations that we have in our work. And then we went on to, a year went by, we did a lot of things, and then we sat down again and we say, okay, we did this culture thing last year, let's do a checkup. I think it was 6 months after that or something like that. Let's see what happens. And then we did it again. When I say we did it, I asked the team to do it, right? Like I didn't do it myself. I'll be transparent with that. And I left the room again and I let them do it. And there was a different facilitator, so we can shift things around. And they talk about it again. And there was a lot of things that were repeated, but there were a lot of new elements to it, new nuances to the things that we're saying. Even our purpose started shifting. And then I started observing how every little thing that I was doing influenced my team in a certain direction. And then I was able to understand how my impact as a manager was giving the team the tools they needed, the understanding they needed, et cetera, et cetera. And then we did it once again, beginning of this year, after I presented the strategy review. And from there, we started a whole new set of initiatives that it has to do with 360 feedback, it has to do with design reviews, how do you meetings. We changed the communication channels that we had. We started improving the way we say things, right? We were referring, I'm going to tell you a funny story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Our team, I didn't make a whole deal about this after a few months in, and probably after a year, I started being really, really pushy about this. But my team was always talking about when we were doing design reviews or we're presenting work, they were talking about final. This is the final design. This is the final whatever, right? And I started having problems with that word because there's nothing finite in design and there's nothing finite in life. Everything is recycled in biology and science, you know, and everything is changing, ever changing in design. Like every month, we're rethinking. Customers are aware of the new things and they learn other apps and they learn new patterns and they become, you know, they bring new behaviors into our ecosystem and they have different expectations as well. So there's nothing that we can say, this is forever. This is final. This is dead. We cannot say that, right? So I started making fun of everyone who was like using the word final, right? Just on the review meetings a little bit.
And what happened?
We barely use it anymore now. We're talking about versions, we're talking about this release, we're talking about, you know, and now I feel that this is going to influence the way we think about design. It's going to influence the way we talk design with other people. We will say like, every time we present a design and the product manager or the business stakeholder says like, oh, this is the final version, we will say, no, it's not. And then we'll be influencing the organization to understand that whatever we do is a live thing, it's alive, it changes all the time, it evolves, right? And this becomes culture. This becomes culture that grows into my team, out of my team, and start, can I say influencing the organization? You would say infecting the organization.
Yeah, influencing. That's
influencing
wonderful.
the organization. Yeah. So that's a simple. Yeah. That's a simple example on a lot of things that we're doing, right?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that example. I think it really brings to life what you practice, and it sounds a lot like they were modeling behaviors as well as you went along. I'm curious though, when you got them to fill up the culture canvas, like why did you had to leave the room? Aren't you part of the culture?
I am really happy with the team. I love every single person that is part of it, but it's an experiment for me, right? I want them to feel empowered, that they have the tools to define their own culture. And I feel, and this is probably something that we discussed before, Daylon, when you were asking me about the differences between Europe and Asia. And I feel that in Asia, if you have a certain position of power, naturally people will feel influenced by whatever you say. So I didn't want to risk the fact that I want a team to be independent and autonomous and, you know, and learn from their own decisions by me being there and maybe, you know, influencing. It's not just influencing. I don't want them to feel that I'm observing because this is for them, right? I want to be part of it, of course. I love them and I love the things that the team is doing. I'm really proud of them. And I feel they grew a lot since the day we started working together. And they made me grow a lot and I learned a lot by working with them as well. So this is a space I want to give them for them to discuss things, right? I open a channel that is a anonymous way of giving feedback to me. Nobody uses it.
Is that on Slack?
No, it's a Google form.
Okay, so you have a Google form where people can give you feedback anonymously.
Yeah, nobody says anything.
No, as in no one fills up that form?
I think maybe Susan, but you know, Susan is like Susan. I speak with her every day, and she's
Susan's
like, "You're doing
UX
it wrong."
manager, right? Yeah, got it.
Yeah, she's my senior UX manager, and she has no, you know, she has no problems in telling me, "Natan, you're doing it wrong," and I love it. Every time we have conversations like that, I love it. I love to be challenged, and I make a lot of mistakes as well. So it's responsibility of the team to point that out to me if I'm doing it wrong, right?
That sounds really great. And I think it's a great segue, right, to a question that Karen asked about culture, especially now you're practicing remote work, right? How do you and knowing that culture is about people seeing and copying behavior, how do you do that with your remote team, right? Like they got no one to copy unless limited to the Zoom interactions that they have with you right now. So do you find that it's more challenging to get them to copy the right behaviors?
Of course, yeah, it's definitely more challenging. There's no way around it. Like it's different, right? The rapport that you build with people when you're face to face, they can feel your temperature and they can understand your body language differently, and they can hear you angry even if you're not looking at them, right? They can feel your vibrations. I don't know how that works, whatever it is, but
Totally get it. Energy.
yeah. The energy is there, and it's irreplaceable, right? So we need to put in place a lot of different tools and ways of doing things to, sort of level with that a little bit. It is difficult. What we try to do internally is trying to reward what we think is the good work, right? I will point out, if we're underperforming, I will point it out is in general terms. The guys, we can do better. You know who you are. I don't need to tell you. And then I can point out who did it good and examples, right? So the way we're trying to address these issues of following good following good patterns of behavior is by creating spaces for collaboration and integration. And the way we do it is we have 3 main touch points during the week. One is on Monday, another one is on Wednesdays probably, and Fridays. So on Mondays, end of the day, we do a simple report of last week. And we do it with a simple reason of awareness. So everyone can argue about things that are happening and if we need to synchronize at a certain level, or if there's something that we should look at during the week, right? It's not a time reporting thing where I'm making sure that people work. It's more about the team communicating to each other. What are the things that I'm doing so we avoid overlaps and we incentivize the collaboration? So naturally, when we started doing this, people struggled to understand why we had to do it. But then eventually we grew into Susan and I trying to point out things like, hey, Habib, you need to connect with Guru on this topic. Go ahead, right? And then
so you get them connecting with each other, right?
Exactly.
And not just be like in silos.
Exactly. Eventually what happens is people started to ask questions. Hey, you're working on this search thing? Oh, I have something that might help you. And the team started doing by themselves. So I basically ask questions now, if I have any questions. If I don't have any questions, I don't force the conversation anymore. And that's a little bit of a behavior that we want to reward, that open communication and collaboration, and show what I'm doing to the team. And ask for help if you need it, right? The second thing that I'm doing we are doing in Wednesdays is more for the upskilling or professional development, where we have a list of lecturers, the speakers, that they will present a certain topic that they're interested in sharing. For example, researchers will talk about how to do data analysis, or somebody will talk about, I always choose super philosophical topics that nobody cares about because, I like to speak. And it's my moment to shine. They give me the mic, and for half an hour, I don't shut up. And that I love it. And sometimes designers will present about principles, or they show work that they do in systems, or writers will talk about how to do writing, or they pick topics, and it's everything to do upskilling, right? And on Fridays, it's just for fun. We try to showcase, we try to cherry pick what are certain moments of the week that we want to share with the team, right? So we have, there's a leadership group that meets for half an hour, 20 minutes every day, and we talk about desynchronization. right? And we say, oh, we're doing this for this part of the app. We should do it for this other part. Let's connect the guys, right? Or whatever. So every now and then we say, okay, why don't we tell this on Friday? And we sign up, right? And it's sort of like a show and tell. And at the end of the day, we play a game that is a remote game. And I've been interviewing our team and doing internal research about culture and whatnot. And the thing that people like the most in our team is these moments of integration, especially when we play games on Friday, because it's completely informal. And it's a moment to relax, and it's a moment to know the team and challenge each other in a personal level and make connections. And it's really fun because now we have a long list of games that we play. And the idea is whoever wins that week will design the game for the next week. And I think that's a really interesting and fun way of doing it. Yeah. Some games are a little bit offensive. Some other games are super simple. Some are more complicated.
As you were sharing it, I was like, a team that plays together stays together. I was like, wow, yeah. that's like that's like you're practicing that.
Yeah. And the last thing happens on Fridays is sometimes we invite people. Actually, happened once. I want to do it more often. We invite people from other companies. Actually, happened twice to talk about something or to just have an informal conversation, right? Another aspect of how we reward these kind of behaviors is we have certain recognitions. Every quarter, the team votes for 3 awards. I don't remember now. Team player, first pick. I don't know. It has names like that and certain criteria. Who would you choose? Who's your first pick? You need to do a project. Who you pick, right? Who is the best player? The MVP, right? And things like that. And then every quarter we have a page where we recognize the effort of everyone, right? And then the second thing is we have a list of side projects that we love to do. We have like mini projects that help us do operations or help us do research or help us whatever it is, design systems. And the team, anyone in the team has the opportunity to lead and experience leading a project by themselves, and they have complete ownership of it. And some people react really well to it, and they were rewarded and recognized as leaders after having a few experiences leading these small projects. And they grew immensely in terms of confidence and in terms of they were self-driven. They developed this self-driven, soft skill that is, for me, is really important. And they develop inquiry to other people because they start to collaborating with other people, needing help from other people. And I think it was amazing. So that's why I think recognizing the good behaviors is more positive. It's always positive balance versus punishing the bad behavior, right? People who misbehave in a culture of positivism, they know who they are. We don't need to say it. They feel bad about it already. Right?
Yeah. I think that's really great, because it almost sounds like you set up a very structured time with very specific objectives in each meeting, right? So Monday is essentially being able to check in with everyone and connect people together for work. Wednesday sounds like everyone in the team is just learning. Friday sounds like everyone's trying to blow off steam. And that sort of connects people, because one of the things that happens during COVID is that we don't really have a chance to have lunch with our colleagues or do all this side things anymore. So it's great. Someone's asking, like, do you have ideas for games that has worked very well to bring the team together?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, we have a long list. We try to document.
Maybe just one or two that really stood out.
Let me think. Sometimes we play design games, right? They're all related to creative design. So for example, no, things that are related to design. There's Sagar, for example, came up with this that is really interesting. That is, you have a logo or brand or a really recognizable brand, but you zoom in to the pixel. And the game is you need to guess what is. And then over time, he will zoom out little by little. And the first one to guess the brand, gets a point or something, right? Then
That's a cool game.
Yeah, actually, it's really fun because everyone is so engaged and paying attention to the shape, to the color, and everyone is shouting names. It's really, really fun.
I like that.
Then we try to play what is it called, the game, that game where you have the assassins and the police, that usually you play.
How do you play that on
offline.
Zoom? Oh,
They found a really interesting way that is by turns, right? You need to close your eyes, and then there's a moderator. A moderator will say, "Okay, police, open your eyes, close your eyes." It's a little bit like by turns.
Interesting. I think that really shares a lot about how, like a team that plays together, like grows together. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Then
go
it's
ahead.
really fun when you identify the liars, the good liars. That's really good.
Well, that's good contextual information. And
that builds a portfolio, right?
Exactly. And Emma from Zoom is asking, I believe Emma sounds like an introvert, right? And he or she is mentioning that they have difficulty trying to maybe stand out because they're not the person who, he's not the guy who keeps talking during chats, right? So if he's an introvert, like how should he go about like communicating with his colleague, like if he's more introverted? Do you have introverted team members?
I will say there's a lot of introverted people in my team, and some of them interact less, some of them interact more. And some people opt to, instead of speaking, they just write in the chat, right? We're having a conversation, and some people ask questions by chat, even though I wouldn't be offended if somebody interrupt me to ask me a question at all. Yeah.
Got it. So what I hear you say is you just try and let them do what is natural for them, and of course the extroverted ones will just start speaking.
Well, we try to, what I try to do sometimes that it might be uncomfortable for the team, and I'm sorry about this team, but I do it anyway. I'll keep doing it. By the way, there's this is my team. Some of them, most
guessed
of them.
it.
So something I do in smaller meetings, when we 5, 6, no more than that, I go about asking people what is your thoughts around this, right? So Daylon, you give me your opinion because you don't have problems expressing yourself, and then I'll make a pause and I'll ask Chris, what do you have to say about this? Do you have any thoughts, right? And then I'll ask one by one if I feel that they don't find the space to engage, right? Because sometimes introverted people, they have a lot of things to say. It's not that they don't have things to say. They're really smart people, and sometimes they say things that makes everyone reflect, and it's like, well, we didn't thought about that. Maybe we should hear more about this person. But this person doesn't speak because it doesn't feel the space, or it doesn't feel it has the permission, or I don't know what is happening. So we create the space for them, right? And we're patient, and we should stop talking, and we wait. And this is part of our culture now, and we try to do it every so often. And sometimes we make fun of it, right? We make fun of we say, Habib, stop talking. We're talking too much. And probably he didn't open his mouth in the entire meeting. And now it's fine to do so because he knows that he's struggling with it, and we're trying to help him. So we point it out every now and then, and it works. I mean, every day, when he has to present, he goes about presenting fine. And when he has to interact with people, sometimes, you know, he missed the window for asking the question. So we try to open those spaces for him.
That's been very empathic and also being very thoughtful and compassionate for your team members. That's really wonderful. And I wanted to also spend some time to ask you about organization culture, right? Because we've been talking about your team culture and how you built your team culture. I believe you're trying to transform AirAsia, which is a traditional budget airline company. And of course, during COVID, you've ran into business issues because travel has literally stopped during COVID, and you're now like building products. So I wanted to really understand a little bit like how you try to introduce the way that you work, or some of the thinking on thinking about digital. How do you introduce that to the organization?
I learned the hard way that one person cannot be the only force of change in a big organization. It's really hard. It's really hard emotionally. It's really hard energetically. You know, you run out of energy right away. So I guess during my first year, I thought I was just going for it, and I was getting really frustrated and sometimes angry about it. And people noticed. Like, people noticed it. As soon as I became aware of it, I realized that I needed to take a different strategy for being more influential. I definitely have a certain thing where if I go to a meeting, you know, with the CEOs and the head of e-commerce and whatnot, we can have a really good conversation, and they will stop and listen what we have to say. And sometimes that doesn't happen for other people in the company, that they lack the, I don't know what they lack, the presence maybe, or I don't want to guess. There's
sure.
something there, right? There's something there. So what I notice is that the best way to do it is by I think Bruce Lee was saying, "Be water," right? And that metaphor, I use it, or my interpretation of it is, try to go. Don't face the obstacle head on, right? If there's an movable obstacle, just, you know, find the path or less resistance and move on and keep doing what you're doing. That eventually your influence will reach even to the hardest point in the organization. So the way I try to do it now is by focusing a lot in how my team does the work, how my team communicate, how my team offers solutions, how my team interact with other people. It's no longer me and my ego alone convincing everyone that there's a better way. Is a group of people working towards a goal. And when you can do that, first of all, you feel invincible, because the day you're lower in energy, there's other people fighting with you, right? I don't want to use the word fighting. Let's do working. It's working for you, right? Working towards the same goal. So my focus now is trying to find out what are with my influence in certain sectors in the organization, how I can open paths for my team to go and do the work, right? So, for example, if we go and we have stakeholder conversations with, you know, the head of e-commerce, and we sat down and we talk about yearly goals and whatnot, I'll ask somebody in my team to moderate, and we'll have a strategy where the team is the one who's leading the conversation, and it's not myself as a person. So then, you know, we try to align internally, and even though we're not always agree with what is it that we need to do, we try to find purpose in these paths, right? maybe it's too metaphorical, but this is where I'm trying to do, right?
I get it, and I think it's almost like you're opening doors for your team and you're enabling your team. And I'm pretty curious, like how you do that exactly without yeah, like I think there's a balance, right, to it. It's like you have to catch them when they fall too, or do you
Oh
not
yeah,
catch them when
definitely.
they fall? Yeah, right. So it's kind of like you have to be kind of conscious and almost like present, like what you're doing. So how do you kind of create this synergy with your team? Because it almost sounds like when you use the metaphor water, right? It's like everyone is water in your team, right? And then you're flowing throughout the entire organization. So how do you create this kind of like synergy? It's almost like elite athletes, like, going with the flow. Yeah.
Now that you put it that way, it sounds amazing. I'm now realizing that it probably I put it metaphorically, and now everyone is thinking, "Oh, this is amazing!" Like all the change that we're looking, they're
No,
doing.
it's like you're following the flow.
Yeah, yeah. So what that means practically is sometimes we find a space to be really human centric, and we can fulfill our purpose of listening to customers and bringing the insights and influence the products a lot. And some other times we have no saying, and we need to do whatever is there that we need to do, and we try to do it as fast as we can with the best quality that we can, in order to move on to the next thing. So our focus mainly is putting extra heart and effort in whatever space we create for fulfilling this purposeful thing that we want to do, that is creating better experiences, helping the customers to reach their goals and whatnot. And at the same time, sometimes we need to put our hand down and say, okay, we're gonna finish this week, and we're gonna give you this and do whatever you need. We're gonna continue doing this other thing that we're really passionate about, right? And we try to have these conversations and bring awareness to the people we work with in different forums, right? So I have conversations with a lot of business stakeholders every now and then, and we talk about the problematics and the challenges, and they tell me about their objectives, and I'm always trying to be a force of like a negotiating, trying to a force of good and saying we can do better, right? That's my message. We can do better. But if if you think that we cannot invest in this right now, then okay, by all means, let's do it quickly and then move on to other things that probably can be more valuable or more meaningful for our customers, right? So being water means that you're going to run into a lot of frustrations, but at the same time, you need to be an enabler, right? You need to find where are those paths, and you need to give your team the tools. And sometimes you need to sit down with your team and say, remember when we talk about this purposeful thing? Well, forget about it. It's just like put a picture and let's move on to the next thing, right? But the spirit is there, and I see a definite improvement in the language that the company is using right now to refer to certain things. And after 2 years of doing the work, it's a traditional old organization already. It's been there for a long time. It won't change one day to another. Digital transformation started years ago, and it's going to continue for a long time, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And could you maybe share, understand it's probably a little bit sensitive to share about AirAsia right now, but in the past when you were working for different organizations, how do you bring that practice of customer centricity into the organization, just looking at customer data, that design thinking practice? How did you bring it true to the rest of the organization?
That's a good question, and in different organizations happen in different ways, right? And in Lazada, it was easier because I had a bit more freedom to move around and explore and experiment. When we got acquired by Alibaba, things sort of changed. Alibaba is really process based, and They have really specific goals and metrics in mind, so they don't look at other things. But we found a loophole in all this business centric mindset that was internally. It was in the logistics operation, right? We couldn't affect the product much because the consumer product is a really political place, right? Is the window, or is sort of like the showroom of your company, and there's a lot of political interest in who owns what and how we do things. But logistics is, the back end. Nobody cares much about it if it's red or blue or green, right? So we found a space there to practice we went full on service design mode, and we grew up, a really small team, and we did everything, like from all the research methodology we could think of that were fitting into a schedule. And we keep a really, really tight communication to our stakeholders, explaining exactly what we were doing each week, where we were going to travel, how we're going to do things. And right after that week, we were sending a visual report on all the experience that we have running the methodology, to be really, really visual, so they can empathize with us working in the thing, and taking conversations and interview people and recordings of the tests that we're running and whatnot. And then we managed to shave, a good chunk of cost in the operation that saves the company a lot of money. And they were really impressed by it. And I told them, yeah, this is a design process in action. We should do this more often. And I was like, sure. Where do you want me to go? We'll do it more often, every day, as many times as you like. Before doing that, though, before we found that space, I started running workshops more with the objective of bringing awareness of the methodology internally to HR, to the security team, the business risk team, the engineers who were offering our help to solve any kind of problems with the methodology, to challenge ourselves, and also to bring, hey, you know what? Yeah, we can do a workshop now because we have these new tools that we can use. I remember when I started talking about employee experience to HR people, they were looking at me like, what is that? Like, what are you talking about? And I basically mirroring the same system or the same methodology into a different context to solve quite similar problems, by the way, like quite similar problems. And when we started talking about empathy, and we ran some workshops, and every time you do an ideation workshop with anyone, because it's so playful and it's so fun, they transform themselves, like their brain change a little bit. And then that helped to bring a little bit of this further into the organization, right? Yeah. And then when we managed to say, we run this project, it costs $1,000, we save $10,000, business people went, wee, let's do it more.
That sounds awesome. Well, what I learned from your short sharing is that you almost have to find this spot in the organization that is not contested, and no one's looking at it or paying too much attention to it. And probably you have to partner up with the business stakeholder over there and just like, hey, like, let's try it out. And then you just do what you want. So it's almost like an open lab, right? And with permission, this open lab allows people in the organization to participate or even just observe what is going on. And after which you see the results, and you share the results back into the organization and get everyone excited about it. That sounds like a wonderful method.
The PR of the process is probably one of the most important things. You can run a workshop internally you can run a workshop in your company, arrive to a somewhat acceptable result, but the PR of it could be amazing. You can put a lot of emphasis in how you sell the results, not the results itself. How you sell, how people felt, interview the people and like ask them like, do you think this is a good approach? Should we repeat it? And you bring all this enthusiasm back to the key stakeholders. And the most important thing is make them participate on the process. If they cannot be actively in the room with you, just let them participate by looking at each step, the reporting and the communication part of whatever you do. I found over time that is probably the most important thing of my job, that is informing and communicating. Hey, this is happening. We're doing this trade-off. We're making these decisions. This is why we're making these decisions. It's going to be, we're going to deliver on next week. If we cannot deliver next week, explain, okay, we're going to delay because of this, because of that, right? And make them part of the process is really important for them to feel included and feel that they have certain amount of control over the work that you're doing. If they don't know what you're doing, there's a certain veil of they're afraid of you're not doing it, or you're not going to reach on time, or there's certain uncertainty that makes them nervous. Are we doing the right thing? But if you do something that is always, when you report and when you talk with them, always tell them what's coming next, and they know, they become aware of like, you did all these things and then you're going to do, okay, then they're more relaxed about it, right? And this is something I try to do with my team every time we have conversations. Is a long time ago I started asking them, what are you going to do next? And at the beginning they didn't know, and now they know they need to know. And if they don't know, we're going to talk about it, right? But it's also part of our culture, is trying to know exactly, look, design is a process. You can iterate and you can move to the next step. So what are you going to do, right? It's not that difficult. Use your criteria. If you're satisfied with the result, move to the next step. If you're not, iterate, right? That's a simple formula you need to follow. You make a mistake, it doesn't matter. We'll fix it. But know exactly what you're going to do next. This will give you an incredible amount of credibility. That's probably the best advice I can give you today.
I think that's wonderful. I think that's really, really helpful. And with that, actually, it's a pretty nice segue, and we came full circle. We went to talk about a little bit about the organization, and then you came back and you spoke about the team again, which I think really is where change begins, right? Change begins at the individual level, and then it goes to the team, and then it goes to the rest of the organization. Also kind of a quoting a quote from Confucius from ancient times. I was just wondering if you have any advice or any suggestions for maybe newer managers or change agents who are asked to participate and drive change in their organization. What would you share with them as someone who's driving change in their first year?
Well, there's a long list of things we can say about it. Let me see if I can pick. Well, if I can only say one thing, that's really difficult for me. Only one thing. I'll say, keep trying, find out what it went wrong, change it, and do it again. Because failure needs to be part of your process. Is the moment where you learn how to do better, right? I never met my grandpa, right? I never met my grandparents. My grandfather from my father's side, but I heard he always said, when something goes wrong and you do it again, you're gonna do it better. And if you do it again, you do it better. And you do it again, you do it better, right? So be mindful when you're repeating, what is the part that failed, right? Be really mindful of learning why they fail and what is it that you need to change in order to move to the next iteration, right?
Yeah, that sounds wonderful, and it really is very aligned with what I believe in as well. I really believe people should be more like a progressionist rather than a perfectionist, because there's no perfection. And I think you were mentioning yesterday when we had a conversation as well, the power of iteration, right?
Oh,
And how
yeah.
we iterated as we were doing a recording, and it was beautiful, right? Like we didn't get it right the first few times, and then by, I don't know, the 10th try, like we got it. So I really had a better sense of iteration. And in fact, I actually shared it with one of our clients, Prudential, today, and I said, hey, really, like I have a newfound appreciation to Kaizen right now because of Natan. So it's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing and your experiences, and it's so wonderful for you to also like shed some light on your time in Lazada and during the Alibaba merger as well. I think we got a peek into that. I do wish you all the best in transforming AirAsia.com, and I think this is a really interesting period of time for the company and also for your team. And with that, well, let's give Natan a virtual round of applause and thank him. And we shall catch you again for our next session, which is next month. And we'll stop the live recording.